Meeting is now streaming live on Facebook. Got it. Money Monday is starting soon. 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 All right. Hi, everyone. My name's Henry. I am, of course, your friend in finance. Give me 1 second while I share this onto my Facebook page. Going live right now to talk about the car market. And post. This big. All right. Fantastic. And you come back on over here. I'm walking around. All right. Hi, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Money Monday. I am Henry. I am your friend in finance. And we're joined once again by the one, the only, Chris Tanner.
Hello.
Hi, everyone. We're very excited to be here, especially because I swear that Chris and I are separated by literally thousands of miles, but I swear that I have that exact same polo in my closet now, or at least a very
good partners.
Yeah, which shows we both got really good taste in polos.
Oh yeah.
We've got a very exciting episode of Money Monday today. Today, we're going to be talking about the car market. It's doing some really weird things. But before we dig into that, just one really quick thing to keep in mind. On September 21st at 5 p.m. Mountain Time, 7 p.m. Eastern, I'm going to be hosting a webinar on Investing 101, the Beginner's Guide. So if you've ever thought about investing, but you don't know where to begin, join us there. This webinar is going to be what's going to give you the building blocks, so you know that you're going to be making the right decisions when it comes to investing. There's a lot of confusing things out there, and there's a lot of ways to accidentally take a false step. But I'll be there to show you the light, so you can light your own way into your financial future. Now, back to our subject at hand. Let's talk about cars. This is, if you saw last week's episode, this is, of course, which I highly recommend, by the way, if you haven't. Chris did an amazing job role-playing as my financial advisor, because I am actually, in real life, IRL, looking at buying a car, because our old car is just on its way out. So Chris last time walked me through some very important questions. I highly recommend you check that out if you haven't done so already. But yeah, today we're going to just keep talking about the process, because as part of my due diligence for buying a car, I've done research on what the car market is doing right now. And Chris and I have talked about how the market's just very weird right now. It's doing some really weird things. And so we wanted to have this episode specifically to talk about what are some of the things that you normally want to keep in mind when you're going into buying a car. What's weird, what's going on right now, and then even with all of that weird stuff, what are some things that we should still keep in mind, some of those underlying empirical rules and guidelines that we can still use even in today's weird market, which I'm very excited for. I like guidelines. I don't know about you, Chris, but guidelines give me a way to move forward, so I know I'm making the right steps. So I'm very excited about this discussion today. So, without further ado, let's talk about, Chris, what are some things that normally when we're buying a car, what are some things that we should be trying to keep in mind? Some rules of thumb for car purchases.
Yeah, so one that I've heard over and over again is that the moment you buy a new car and drive it off the lot, it loses 20% of its value the moment you drive off the lot. That's how I've heard it phrased. And from that, the wisdom is spend your money on a used car rather than a new car, because it depreciates like that first, fifth. So buying a used car, there's things you don't know, and there's a reason that depreciation happens. So it's still smart. It's still important to be smart about the decision. Consider where you get it from. Ask the detailed questions. Try to get a sense of how well it was taken care of. But if it was taken care of, at least average or better, or even a little bit below average, you're really better off buying used.
Yeah, that's this is Chris. Remember how I said there was one other thing that I wanted to bring up that I knew that that I was like, I can't remember what it is. I just remember what it is. There's actual websites out there that you can Google for each specific model of car. You can Google if you look for the repair rate for that model of car. I'm looking at Toyota Corollas right now. So I Googled 2021, 2019, 2017 Toyota Corolla, and then repair rate. And there's websites out there that show you what the true cost to own is for each one of those, including depreciation. They actually use statistics of and find what the average depreciation is for each of the cars, which it's when you're looking at it, the number on the screen, it's really mind-blowing how much the car is depreciating in value every single year. Which I've heard some people say my car is an investment, but it's not really. The car lets you make more money, but the car itself is not an investment because it is literally guaranteed to go down. So as far as investments go, that's a terrible investment to make. So fantastic. 20%, the car depreciates 20% when you buy a new car, when you drive it off the lot. That's and because of that, the other thing you mentioned was buy used. So over here, I'm going to write on the top here, guidelines. These guidelines in the normal world. In the normal world, these are guidelines to keep in mind. 20% depreciation when you buy a new car, and because of that, it's important to buy used. The other thing that we were talking about a little bit ago is, Chris, things like warranties. What's your opinion about warranties? You go to the dealership and they they try to sell you on the warranty. People are always calling my phone offering extended warranties.
Oh yes,
So,
I'll get those.
Yeah. What's your opinion about warranties when it comes to cars?
So warranties on depreciating assets, whether that's a car or like a big appliance that you get from Best Buy or anything like that, those are really money makers for the companies that sell those. And the rule of thumb is have a cash reserve, have an emergency reserve that is the right size, and we have some formulas for that, so that you can self-insure. So any coverage or protection you think you'd be getting from a warranty, yes, if you do end up needing it, that's great, but that's 2% of people sort of win out, quote, on that bet. And really for the average person, you want to be in a position where you're safe from the ups and downs because of your strong savings, rather than paying extra money for coverage on a depreciating asset that you really don't need.
Yeah, absolutely. And so I wrote it down here. If everybody at home remembers some of their math formulas from high school, cash reserve is greater than warranty. That means we want this is more desirable, that there is greater desire for that cash reserve. And like Chris said, we actually have we use different formulas here at Plan and Act to decide what is the appropriate cash reserve for you. If you're worried about cash reserve or something like that, wondering, do I have enough money? Come talk to us and we can help you figure that out. Or if you find yourself in a place where you're constantly hitting the end of the month and you're like, I keep hitting the end of the month and I have no money left over, that's also a place where we can help with different strategies to help you actually build up that cash reserve too. I don't know, this is my moment of pride. Some of our greatest success, my greatest success stories and successful moments is just getting emails from clients going, I've never had this much in savings before, and it feels so good because you're safe from things like the types of things that you would normally need a warranty for. People are just self-insuring now. Kind of tied into this, we were talking about this a little bit ago too, Chris, is the the idea of like enough car. How do people know it? And like, we were talking about the idea of another guideline is you want to make sure you're not buying too much car for your income. Because if you're buying too much car, that means you're living beyond your means. You're borrowing from your future to pay for your now, for your now. So you want to make sure you have what do you think about the enough car? Do you think that's a good way to say it, Chris, or how would you say it?
I like that. Enough car, not too much car.
I'm going to put that in parentheses. Not too much.
Yeah, and I'll chime in here too. If you missed last week, definitely encourage you to watch it and see what we talked about there. But the main principles we discussed last week relate to this, because determining what is enough, what isn't too much car, goes back to why you want and need the car, and that's the starting point. And I think you could add that as a guideline, Henry. Start with what you need the car for.
Start with what?
What and why?
Need it for. There we go. I ran out of space vertically, so I'll put it off to the side there.
And I'll use a personal example here, because I live in the mountains, and if I needed a car for driving during the winter from here to Denver, I'm a couple hours from Denver, and there's some mountain passes, I wouldn't be looking for a Toyota Corolla. Great car, I used to own one, but not for winter driving through the curvy passes. I would need a four-wheel drive car. That's why my wife and I own one. And so we also have formulas for discerning, okay, what's enough car given anybody's income situation, but also what the functionality of the car will be also helps determine what enough car is.
Yeah. So I drew 2 hours here. Enough car for the purpose, and then also enough car money wise. And again, that's something else. We actually use different formulas to help people. It's so easy to go into if you don't prepare for this, you go into the dealership, and what is the salesperson immediately asks, well, how much can you afford? And the reason they ask that is because they're trying to anchor you way up here. I mean, if we're being completely honest, people could afford just about anything. Like, I could afford to make $1,000 a month payment. I would just eat less. So it's important to this process that we take people through, that we have for people as well, with these algorithms. Also super important, so people know they're going to go in there. Their dealers, the salesperson's gonna try to anchor them really high, and they're going to have these numbers so they can go, okay, that's fantastic. I'm looking in this range, and then that way they can take control of the situation as opposed to letting the salesperson run away with them. Cool. I think these are some really good guidelines. Did you, Chris? Should we add anything else?
Well, that comes to mind right now. So if anything, we'll hit anything that's left in the recap if we missed anything.
Yeah. How about let's do this? Let's keep this up here for now, but then let's talk about some of the things that are happening in the car market right now. Because as I've been doing my homework to buy this car, I got to tell you, it's been blowing my mind, because I've told Chris about this, but there's literally, I'll be looking at like a 2019 Toyota Corolla, and the same exact model car, but brand new, like 2022 Toyota Corolla, and the 2019 one is selling for more. It has a higher price tag than the brand new car, and I have never, it boggles my mind. It's because it's the exact same car. So there's some really weird things going on in the market, and we're seeing some other weird things in other places in the market too, like the housing prices have shot up. But this is just another example too that Bob's been talking about, how we're at the end of this 100-year debt cycle, and so there's going to be some weird things that we're going to start to see because history doesn't repeat, but it does rhyme, and you know, periodically throughout history, you know, where we have these black swan events that sometimes that lead to things like a lost decade of investing. So this is definitely for me. I'm experiencing this, and I'm like, oh yeah, this feels like a sign of something bizarre going on. Yeah, Chris, I know I've been doing this research because I want to buy a car. Have you seen anything? Have you started to notice anything like this too, or heard about it in the news or anything?
Well, we had a client at an example, sort of corroborating your experience. We had a client who not long ago sold their used car for more than they had bought it for after owning it for, I think it was 8 years. And so that to me was unheard of. Even if it sat in a lot and they didn't put any miles on it, that would be shocking. But they used it. So the mileage increased, it got older, and yet they sold it for more. And so that's just another example that things are kind of weird. You wouldn't expect that. That's not the depreciation that we expect with cars.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's like I've seen a couple different theories for why this is happening. Ultimately, it's one of those you know, free market supply and demand kind of things going on, and just manifesting in a really bizarre way. I was telling Chris this earlier. One of the theories that I read for this is that there's a chip shortage happening right now because everybody wants to start mining crypto, and because of that, the car manufacturers aren't getting the chips that they need in order to make the new cars. And because of that, and I think I've seen this too, there's actually not too many new cars on the lot. So if you want to buy a new car, especially if you want a specific color or something like that, you got to actually order it and then wait for it to be made and delivered to you, as opposed to having the availability of just going to the lot and going, yep, that's the one that I want, and then walking in and taking it away that same day. So there's no immediacy of new cars. So people are going for the used cars because they're immediately available, and that is driving up and up and up the prices of these used cars, which is a completely unforeseen effect of the crypto market. I don't think anybody predicted this. And Chris, you actually told me another kind of knockoff effect too of the chip shortage.
Yes, so related to this is a friend said that they were buying some appliances and their washing machine was delivered, but they were expecting their stove to be delivered as well, and found out the day of that their stove wouldn't be available for at least another month because of this very same chip shortage. And I was shocked that, you know, there's microchips in stoves, but apparently there are now, and they're going stoveless for at least a month.
Wow, I didn't know that. Oh man, that's I don't
Right.
really like to do that. That's rough.
They got rid of their old one in anticipation of this delivery date. That maybe it was the day before, just close before they got this notification that, oh no, it'll actually be a delay, and that already taken the old one to the dumpster. So that's unfortunate.
Yeah. And this is, and we should say, you know, this is definitely a knock-on effect of the knockoff effect of the crypto. But this, this is kind of one of the things with markets, especially an inefficient market like buying a car. I mean, if you all kind of think back in your lives, chances are you've only bought a car maybe once every 7 years or something like that. So there's not this there's not enough people constantly buying and selling in and out of cars to make the market hyper efficient like we see in the stock market. So there because of that, sometimes the inefficiency creates some of these bubbles that we're seeing right now. Another time, and Bob was telling me about this because I had forgotten about this. The first time that I bought a car was during a used car bubble too, because of if you remember the cash for clunkers back in 2000 knots, yeah. And so that was just something nobody had really seen it coming, and nobody knew how it was going to be implemented. And because of that, cash for clunkers, that was when the idea was paying cash to get some of these old gas inefficient clunkers off the road. But
the government was paying the cash, right?
The government, correct? Yes, thank you. And because of that, because the government was paying this money, then the price of used cars suddenly went up because the supply of used cars was shrinking, and then enter young Henry trying to buy a car at that point. And let me tell you, I lead a very lucky life, and so I was very lucky to get a really nice Ford. Ooh, I don't remember what kind of Ford Escort, I guess, and that served me well for like 6 years or something like that until it died in one of the potholes in Philly, which has taken many a car. Cool. So yeah, so those are some of the weird things that are happening in the car market right now. Chris, are we forgetting anything? Should we add anything else?
No, I think as far as we can just theorize, and it's probably a combination of factors. Mm-hmm. But what we're seeing on the other end is that some of these guidelines aren't quite holding, or there's at least some exceptions now to some of them. So yeah, do you want to shall we jump into that?
Yeah, I figure let's do it this way, because I got my erasers. So as we're going through, there's just a couple of these that aren't quite lining up right now the way they normally do. So what we're going to say is, for now, that these are going to be erased, but then in the future, when you go to buy a car, make sure always keep these in mind, and make sure that these are the kinds of, these might come back, that is what I'm saying. So you always want to keep these in mind. But right now, we're not seeing that same level of depreciation as that Chris was talking about. So especially with that example of the car that was 8 years old and sold for more than when it was new. So this suddenly is going away right here. The 20% depreciation when you buy a car new, which is, again, weird, but just something that's not there. Because of that, and this is not necessarily the case, but like I've seen cars, like I said, the same model car, just a brand new version of that car selling for less than a used car. So this feels weird. You don't necessarily want to buy used right now. This is a case where you want to do your homework and find out which is going to give you the most miles per dollar. Miles driven per dollar. A brand new car that costs less is going to drive more miles and give you more miles and for less money, and because of that ratio is going to be better. A rule of thumb is that kind of Bob told us is basically when you have a car, you get the most bang for your buck if you're able to just drive into the ground. The more miles you get out of it, the more more mileage each dollar bought you, basically. So this is going to be something to keep in mind, as opposed to just thinking buy used. Think in terms of what is going to get me more miles per dollar that I spend. Does that look? How does that look to you, Chris?
Yeah, it does. So I mean, just the application there. If it's the same cost or close to the same cost between a new and a used model, then absolutely you're likely, when there was no previous owner, when you're getting it fresh and new, you are likely to get more miles out of it. So yeah, that's a good replacement of that principle.
Yeah. Here, the cash reserve, even with the market being weird, I would say that this actually is still here. Cash reserve is more important than a warranty. It's basically like taking out a middleman the middleman wants profit. So that just makes you more efficient there.
And I'll add, in weird economic times, having a cash reserve is all the more important. So if anything, it might be a time to bolster that and really emphasize cash reserve is far greater, a much more important option than committing to an expenditure on a warranty.
That's a really good point. Yeah. All right. I underlined the cash reserve. Cash reserves are really important. This is something that I feel like I've talked about with a lot of clients too. It's unsexy. Everybody wants to get that 50% annualized return investment, but people don't realize that unless you have the cash reserve to back that up, you're taking a lot of risk and you don't have the muscle to back it up. So cash reserves super important, and also enough car and not too much car. I'm going to keep that there too, because no matter what economic season we're going through, you want to make sure you're buying a car that is within the range of what makes sense for your annual income. And also all those questions that Chris asked me last time, starting with what I need it for and why it's important. That's important no matter what's going on in the world. If you can't articulate, if you can't have a clear idea of either one of these, then then there's really, I don't really see a good way to make a good decision without both of these information points.
Yeah, a salesperson is going to make that decision for you, and you'll end up paying too much.
That is a fantastic way to say it. A salesperson will make these decisions for you, and that's why it's so important. It's important to be in control of your own financial future as opposed to letting them do that. Great. All right. So, one other thing, and I've said this word like 3 times, I think 3 or 4 times so far, just this episode. So I'm going to write it in here. Guidelines. No matter what, make sure you're doing your research. Look up the car. Find out everything you can about the car. Cars in general. Working off of this research. The more information you have, the more able you'll be to make the right decision for what your situation is. You might discover that one car has a better safety record than another, while the other one has better gas mileage, and then you can make that decision of which is more important to me, as opposed to just going to the one dealership and then being told this is what we have available in your price range. There's something that Bob said a while ago, and I really like. Chris, let me know if I'm saying this right. One option is an ultimatum. I think it's like two choices is something else, and then once you get to 3, that's when you have options.
The two is a dilemma. So if you have 2 options, that's still a dilemma. You truly have choices when you have 3 options.
There you go. So how do you get those? By doing the research. And let me tell you, you've already gone through, Molly and I have already kind of talked about different cars, doing research on different cars. We've talked about Honda Civics, Toyota Corollas, Subaru Imprezas. Like, we've gone through all of these. Why? Because we're doing the research. And also, you might just find yourself having fun while you're doing the research, because then you get to imagine yourself behind the wheel of every single one. And at some weekend in the near future, I think Molly and I are going to go and test drive some cars to try them out, because we want to know what they each feel like. That's also part of research, and so we'll know we're going there to do research, so we're not going to, so that way we can make the best possible decision too. So these guidelines, I would say, keep these in mind, even now, even when the market's doing weird things, and then keeping these in mind will help you make the best decision for your situation. Chris, is there anything that we're forgetting?
No, I think we got it.
All right. Well, thank you all so much for joining us for another episode of Money Monday. I am Henry. I am your friend in finance. We have Christopher Tanner here with us. Don't forget to register for Investing 101. The link is in the description. Once again, that's going to be telling you basically some of these guidelines, except for what to do when you're investing, because it's a slightly different landscape, and I'm very excited for you to learn all about it. Thank you all so much for joining us here. I hope you guys have a wonderful week, and take care.
Bye, everyone.